Today we're going to discuss how your child's not perfect and the teacher is probably right. How should we address school behavior?
You're listening to the Guthrie Family Podcast, a podcast where we encourage you in raising your kids and inspire you to grow in your relationships. We're your hosts. I'm Danny.
And I'm Haley. Join us as we love, encourage, and grow.
Today we're going to discuss supporting our teachers as they educate our children in their behavior in the classroom, how that can distract from their education. And it's one of the things that brought us to this is the other day, one of our children got in trouble on the bus. And he has an interesting personality.
Yes, he does.
So we weren't real sure if he was being picked on or if it was him. He is somewhat aggressive when he feels like he's being picked on.
Right.
And so we really wasn't sure what the situation was, but we got it handled. And that's one of the things we'll discuss today is kind of how we handled that. And a couple other things with a few of our other children also. Yes.
So with this many children, you're bound to have some issues with behavioral problems at school. And part of it with our kids is frustration because school is really hard for some of our children. And for some of them, it's the social interaction itself that's difficult. And the one that got in trouble on the bus he's a little socially awkward at times. Now, he has a great personality, gets along well with adults. It's people his age that sometimes it's an issue. And so we have anticipated maybe a little too much that he might be picked on. And so we've tried to really prepare him for that and just, told him, if anybody really puts their hands on you or tries to hurt you, defend yourself.
Right.
But what we didn't anticipate
is him not being able to
just understand, I guess. Yeah.
Him not being able to understand what's actually happening. Like if somebody's actually picking on him or somebody's actually trying to hurt him, or if he's just not getting his way and he gets mad, puts his hands on somebody because he thinks he's being bullied.
He's being bullied. So the biggest thing, the story is that he was on the bus and somebody got the seat that he thought was his and he wanted to sit by the window. And I think that's where he normally sits. And the little boy got his seat.
So I think he thought that the school bus driver told him to specifically sit in a spot next to the window, and then that was his spot. So when the other child took that spot, Colton wanted it because he thought it was his spot, and he put his hands on him. And it was inappropriate.
So of course we get the lecture from the bus driver, which we totally understand her position. She's got this bus full of children, and we've got ours who you would think would be able to hurt a fly, but there you go. He's put his hands on another child. Right. So, and this is actually the second time he's put his hands on a child this year. So we're having to backtrack a little bit and say, okay, Colton, don't put your hands on anybody until we talk about it first. Let us know exactly what's happening, and then we will talk about if it's appropriate to retaliate.
Right.
We don't want to put him in a place where he can't defend himself if there is actual bullying going on. But we do want him to address it with the teacher first, which is what our principal asked us to do.
So it was eye-opening and a bit humbling to me that, this is my view on it. Like if somebody puts your hands on them, then defend yourself. And that's what I believe. But in this situation, I do agree with the principal that I think for him, because to be honest with you, I didn't take really into consideration his personality, and I didn't know how that was going to play out.
Right.
So as we see it played out, I told him, I said, we had another talk, and I said, look, what I told you before about if somebody puts their hands on you, I said, you need to go tell someone. If you're in school, if you're on the school bus, I tried to lay that out. You need to go tell your teacher and let someone know. Don't put your hands on them. Don't defend yourself, which that was really hard for me to say, but I said it.
Right.
Because I am trying to support the school and what they need, and the principals and the teachers and the school bus drivers, because we don't want to cause a problem. We don't want our children to be a problem. But I think the point to that, and one of the reasons we decided to make this video, is not only with how we should be talking to our kids about what they should be doing, but how sometimes as parents, even though we want them to be able to defend themselves, maybe school may not be the best. I guess what I'm saying, maybe you need to take their personality into account. And I don't know that I did that. And another thing is maybe as parents, it's what I did is humble ourselves a little bit to say that maybe the way I'm looking at things is incorrect. Maybe it's not best.
Right. And so we basically, what we wanted to do this for is so that we kind of talk about not taking your children's behavior and placing your pride in who your children are.
Right.
And there are times when I see people defend their kids in situations because they say, well, the teacher was wrong, or they didn't know exactly what was going on, or my kid told me this, because our first story was not the truth from Colton.
Right. Your kid's 5 years old. He's lying.
And so we really had to dig to figure out, because, perception's everything. And then the child is going to tell you, I say child up to whenever, teenager, is going to tell you the story in a way that makes them look good.
Right.
And so what you have to do then is to figure out what is the actual truth. And so we have been in several situations with our children of being in when we get notes from the teacher, they're not paying attention.
Right.
They're not doing what they're supposed to do. And it is easy as a parent to say, well, what were y'all doing? Why was he allowed to do that? Or why were they in that position or that, and here's the reality of it. Your school has 20 little kids in a classroom with one teacher, and they're doing the best they can, and they are not going to keep their eyes on your children 100% of the time.
And think about yourself. I mean, I'm not trying to be ugly to you guys, because I know how it is in our house. But what do you have? 2, 3, 4 kids, and you have them at home, and you miss things. Mm-hmm. So how do you expect the teachers to be on top of every single situation, every second of the day? They're not going to be able to, and they shouldn't have to be. Your child should be orderly and be able to follow instruction. And when they're not, you shouldn't be going to the teacher saying, hey, what are you doing? You should be going to your child saying, what are you doing, and why are we having this problem? Because remember, your child is telling you the story from their perspective, and their perspective is however old they are, 5-year-old's perspective or a 8-year-old's perspective, and is very, very, very likely that their perspective is not the correct perspective.
Right. And there have been times when maybe the teacher wasn't 100% in the right. However, this is a great opportunity to teach your child. There are going to be people in authority, and they're going
Right.
to take advantage of their position, and things are not going to go well. So how do we handle that situation? Basically, and that gives us an opportunity to explain to our children, number one, our thing in our house, life isn't fair.
No.
And so, and
Suck it up, Buttercup. Life's not fair.
People are not always going to respond to you the way that you think that they should. And so now that has not been the majority of the problems. The majority of problems have come back to being our children.
Right.
But that just for the parents that say, well, the teacher really was at fault. They may have been, and they're people too, and they're going to make mistakes.
But they're still the teacher. They're still the authority figure, and you need to teach your child that there is an authority figure. And sometimes the authority figure is not always right, but if that person has been put into a position of authority, and you're under their care, then you need to submit to their authority.
My rule in my house, I do not have any children over who are not obedient. Because if you don't obey me, I can't protect you.
Right.
So if your children are disobedient, don't send them to my house, because I can't protect them, because or their obedience is their protection.
Right.
And so there have been times when I haven't invited kids back over, because I cannot control them. And I don't mean control. They do not listen to anything I say. So therefore, I don't want them upstairs, starting a fire in a closet. I don't know. I don't know what children are capable of that I haven't raised.
Don't grab that knife.
But if you tell a child, don't walk without, the group, and they start running into the parking lot, how do you protect them from being run over by a car?
Right.
So there's
don't run with
things.
that pencil, or you might stick your eye out.
Right.
Oh, Johnny stuck his eye out because he's a moron and he was running with the pencil.
Well, we don't call people morons, Danny. But anyways, basically what we're looking at is trying to teach our children how to be obedient, and then understanding who our children are and being honest about their behavior. Because if you're not honest with yourself about your children's behavior, and you become to be, you were very prideful about it. In other words, you're thinking, well, if they're bad, it reflects badly on me.
Right.
This isn't about you. This is about your child and their behavior. And children are imperfect. And addressing their behavior as it is instead of ignoring it is the only way to deal with this. If you ignore their behavior, it will not change.
Right.
So,
exactly. And that's a very strong point that I just want to reiterate again is you can't ignore their behavior, because if you don't, if you ignore their behavior, nothing's going to change.
right.
It's not going to get better. So you have to confront that, and we're going to go into this, but you have to confront that behavior and get it handled.
So, of course, we always have a book
Right.
that we love to, reference, because this is not about us being an authority in this matter. We struggle with things along with everyone else, but we do like to reference someone who actually is an expert in these areas. So for this one, we're going to reference Ted Tripp's book, Shepherding a Child's Heart.
Right.
One of the best books ever written about how to deal with behavioral issues with your children and how to modify and mold their character. And so
And
I would
quick,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would very much encourage you to buy it, read it, highlight it, read it again. I told Danny I got it back out. I've read it before, and I found so many things. I said I'm going to read it again because there's so many really, really good things in there. So a lot of what we talk about in just a minute is going to be reference from this book.
And as always, we will link that book in the description below. So if you want to go check out the link, we are Amazon affiliate. So just so you know, it helps us out if you buy through our link. So we would appreciate if you did that. But the book will be in the link below. Real easy. Just go click it. It'll take you to Amazon and you can purchase it there.
So one of the things he says selfishness and rebellion are not outgrown. They're problems of the heart.
Right.
And so most of what we deal with our children are those two things, selfishness and rebellion. It's about how things affect me. And then it's about how can I get away with doing something that I'm really not supposed to do, but you're not looking, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
That's rebellion. And so...
and we still do that as adults. So we're like, with God's law, it's like, how close can we walk to sin without being in sin? And the kids are the same way. They're like, how close can I walk to breaking the rules without actually breaking the rules?
Or without being caught. This is what we deal with a lot in our house, is a lot of times our kids know what to do. And there's things like, for instance, I don't want my kids jumping on the couch. I absolutely hate when kids jump on furniture and it tears it up and they want to throw pillows everywhere.
And we have a trampoline outside.
Yes. I mean, this is an outside activity and you're going to get hurt, Of course, I always come home with ER stories of what happens to kids that jump on beds and couches. But anyways, so when the kids the other day, I peeked upstairs, I heard a lot of ruckus, and there they were jumping on the couch. And I said, why would you do that? And they're like, and Jackson basically said, I just didn't think you were going to catch us. It's pretty much what he said. And I said, well, too bad for you. I did. So they know what to do. But they think, oh, if you're not looking, we can do this.
I can get away with it.
Right.
Because it's fun.
It's his childish behavior. It's not necessary, but it's still, he still knew he was not supposed to do it. And he did it anyway.
And remember, parents, when you're going to confront your teacher, remember that your child is doing things at home that is disobeying you because they're thinking from a 8-year-old perspective or a 6-year-old's perspective. So to Jackson, and that was okay because we wasn't up there to tell him no in the moment. And, so don't get all bent out of shape when things happen in the classroom because it's happening in your home too. Right.
So what we want to talk about is how to address the behavior.
Right.
Discipline is not manipulating through anger. It's not about us being, and we talked about this a while ago, not about us being embarrassed of our child behavior, but addressing the actual heart issues of our children. So when your children are doing things that are selfish and rebellious, it is because of their own heart. Right. And so this is a very difficult thing. How do we direct our children in their heart issues? We as adults struggle enough with things like that, but really addressing your children. And I've said before, I said, when my children are saved, which some of them are, but when my children are saved, it's going to be so much easier because you're going to have the Spirit with them. The Holy Spirit's going to help them and have a conscience. Right now, we have a bunch of unsaved people running around this house.
That just does whatever they think.
It's whatever they think or feel. And so, it's harder to address the issues. But this has some great advice for you for children. So one of the things, there's 2 types of parenting. There's superficial parenting and biblical parenting. Superficial being your ultimate goal would be to manipulate behavior to get what you want.
Right.
So, and we're guilty of this, I think, sometimes.
I know very well that we're guilty of this. I'm like, guys, if y'all would just, like, we posted a video, I'll link it, and you've probably seen it, but about taking a picture. I'm like, guys, if y'all would just be still for a few minutes, we'll go to McDonald's. Just be still so we can get this picture. Or, whatever it may be. If you behave today, then you'll have something special when you get home. Right. And it's that's really not the best way to do things.
No, that is part of the superficial parenting. So one of them is bribing them. We were just talking about emotional, which is playing on the child's emotions, basically saying, hey, hey, I'm going to leave you here if you don't do what I told you you're going to do. So you're trying to make them afraid so that they do what you want them to do.
Right.
Punitive, which is punishment, of course, and then behavior modification. So one of the examples he gave, because I thought, I always thought of that as a positive term.
Right.
But what he actually related it to in this book is a parent said, hey, every time you do something good that I want you to do, I'm going to put your name on a piece of paper. I'm going to put it in a jar. And then later we're going to draw names out of the jar and we're going to get prizes, Well, then they realized that the kids were only doing things so that their parents could see them do it. They were only doing good things when their parents were watching. And they were having problems at school and they're having problems when the parents were not watching because this only manipulated the behavior when the mother was watching.
Yeah.
Because then they didn't get their name on a piece of paper. So why do the right thing? So that it didn't address the heart issue. It's just about the action itself. So it doesn't fulfill our ultimate goal, which is teaching our children to love and glorify God.
And one of the things that we teach all the time that we're always telling our kids is, number one, especially with our chores, and whatever your hand finds to do, do it unto the Lord. And the Lord's always watching. Even when we're not watching, the Lord's always watching. The Lord sees everything that you're doing. So whatever you're doing, I don't care if it's taking a bath. I don't care if it's watching a movie with your...
Are you saying that because Jackson keeps bathing and not using soap?
Yes. I'm like, well, yeah. But whatever it is, I don't care if you're sitting there watching a movie, whatever you're doing, do it unto the Lord.
Right.
And actually that, my grandmother taught me that many years ago, and it stuck with me. And as I got older, I found that scripture and
well, it changes your motivation. So you're not doing it to make someone else happy. And here's the reality of it.
It changes your heart.
It does. And if you're teaching your kids, hey, just do this and make me happy, you're not always going to be there. And you may not always see the good things that they do because sometimes you just expect them to act good.
Right.
And so if you're just doing this so that you're trying to get that behavior out of them, that's useless. But doing it as unto the Lord, God's always watching. I always tell my kids, I may not see you, but God does. So going forward about biblical parenting. So what does this look like? So one of the things he talks about, and he goes into depth on this, I would encourage you to read this book, but one of them is encouragement. Correction, which is different from punishment.
Right.
Punishment is taking something away. Correction is actually correcting the problem. Right. So you have to see your child for who they are. You have to talk about their behavior. You have to communicate with them about it, and then how the consequences of their behavior.
Right.
Rebuke, which sounds really bad, but it's really more. He describes it as more of a shock and dismay. How many times have our kids done something and we were like,
don't be a moron.
Well, no, we're like, no, that's not rebuke.
You idiot.
No, you're like, I cannot believe that they did that. We've had this discussion 1,000 times. I really thought they understood.
Normally we just look at each other and we go, what are they thinking? like my dad used to say, what are you thinking? And that was like a rebuke. That was like, you idiot. Mm-hmm. But like Haley and I look at each other and we're really like wondering, what are they thinking?
So this rebuke is talking about your actually relaying to your children, like, I really can't believe you did that. The consequences for this is going to be so large. I just cannot believe you would do something like that. So this is more what he's talking about with this rebuke. Entreaty, which is you're not begging, but you're saying, I really wish you would do what you're supposed to do. Right. Bearing your soul to your children, say, if this is how this makes me feel when you do this, right. This is how it makes God feel. This is the type of person that I want you to be. And here you are, doing this, and this is how this is going to end.
So we ask our kids all the time, like, the decisions you're making, is that who you want to be? Is that who you really are? So the decisions you make are going to ultimately make you who you are. If you continue to make bad decisions, you're just someone who makes bad decisions.
Well, I think it's been very effective with our children who have the reasoning ability, because once you actually discuss, okay, why did you do this? Let's talk about why you did this. It's a tedious process because you want to really get down to the nitty gritty. Why did you make this decision? And a lot of times it's out of selfishness. Because I wanted to, because it was something that looked fun to me and I wanted to do it. So you get down to that and you say, okay, so you made a decision that was selfish and you weren't thinking about others. You may have put others' lives in danger, whatever. I mean, what really, but I mean, you've only thought about yourself here.
Right.
Is that who you want to be? And that really has affected Jaden the most positively, because, of course, he's a little bit older and able to reason, but he says, no, that's not who I want to be. And I've seen some behavior changes with him when he really realizes and thinks about, why am I making this decision?
Because he wants to be helpful and he wants to do what's right. And so he's beginning to try to make decisions, to actually think and try to make decisions that are helpful instead of not.
Well, and if you're wanting your kids to make good decisions when you're not around, they have to learn how to think for themselves. It's not just because I said so. They really have to understand some of the reasoning behind why they're making good decisions. The next point in biblical parenting is instruction. So you're literally instructing your children. So you're telling them, this is what I expect from you. Danny's pretty good about laying out, this is what I expect from you. This is the way I expect you to behave, especially before we go certain places. A lot of times we have it before they go to school in the mornings, Today, I really want you to focus on your schoolwork. Please don't, play with your friends or your pencils or whatever it is you're doing instead of your work. So
quit making your teacher crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do that around here too, we do that around here too. Like, we do tell our kids, hey, here's what I expect of you, especially if we're going to do something, special. We're going out to eat or something. I'm like, all right, guys, this is how I expect you to act. And if you don't act that way, then there's going to be consequences to your actions. Right. So we try really hard before we do anything to tell them how we expect them to act. Like going to church, for the most part, they know how they're expected to act. But if there's a morning that's really, really crazy, and we get all in the truck, and I'll have that conversation with them again. Before we get out, I'll be like, this is how I expect you to act. We're at church, and I expect you to act this way. Right.
Because we kind of get as a group, and we get this group mentality, and they start playing off of each other. So it can get kind of crazy quick. So the next point of biblical discipline is warning. So this is usually what we use when we're going to allow natural consequences to occur. So if you jump off of that, you might hurt yourself. You're warning them.
Right.
Now, I didn't tell them not to, because they should know better. And sometimes they'll say, "Ooh, I might hurt myself. I shouldn't do this." And I'm not talking about little steps. I'm talking about big things. But, anyway, you just give a warning. Hey, I see where you're going, and this is how this is going to end. Or sometimes it's behavioral wise. I'll say, I see the way that you're acting, and I can tell what road you're about to go down, and I think you need to get a hold of yourself.
Right.
So.
And there's one thing that Haley actually started doing that, I completely disagree with initially. But we have a good friend. Her name's Shannon. She's an occupational therapist, and we discussed with her some of these issues we're having with one of our children. And at the time, we were having trouble with them in school because they would go from doing one thing to immediately doing something else, and she was having trouble transitioning.
Right.
And one of the things that Shannon talked about was that you need to give them time to transition, and this is more with ADHD type children.
Right. Kids with processing disorders.
Right. So if you're dealing with a child that has processing disorder, but let me say this, not every child has a processing disorder. So I don't want to hear everybody counting and saying, oh, well, the Guthrie Family Podcast will make a count. That's not what I'm saying. But what it does, Haley, we will count, and I forgot to get that book. I think it's Mel Robbins. It is Mel Robbins, The 5-Second Rule. So I'm not telling everybody they should go around counting, but if you have children with a processing disorder, then you can say, you need to go clean your room. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And the cool thing about that is even in Mel Robbins' book, The 5-Second Rule, which is a great book.
She doesn't always use good language.
There's some stuff
She's
in
a little
there.
edgy, but it's a great concept.
Yeah, the principle is well founded, and it works well.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't agree with the whole counting. Like if you don't do this, like come here now, and the kid don't do it, and they're like 1, 2, like that's you need to bust their butt and they need to mind you, right? So, but with children with processing disorder, and I think and Mel Robbins talks about this in her book. I think it's very, very important. It's the count down instead of the count up. Mm-hmm. So it's 5, 4, or 3, 2.
Well, and it's interesting. She didn't really use this for processing disorder. She's actually using it for people who are having a hard time getting things done and making themselves do stuff. Right. We kind of applied it in this situation because what we understood about Daniel. Can we say that?
Let's say whatever.
What we were understanding about Danilyn is that she was having a problem with transition. So when she's in the middle of playing with something, you say, okay, it's time to go do this without giving a transition time. There were issues. So a lot of times we'll say, hey, go ahead and put your toys up. We're about to go eat or whatever. And then she'll, that gives her time. And then we'll say, okay, we're going to eat. Let's go eat. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're going. And so she knows that she's going to move. And honestly, there is what happens if she doesn't do it? She's never not done it. I think she understands it's not a warning. This is me giving you this time, this countdown to transition your mind to this is what we're about to do. And sometimes we're going to clean your room. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right. Let's go. And then we get started. So it's more of a countdown to start something, not if you don't do this, this is going to happen.
Right. And it's been working really, really well.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So.
Okay. The next one is, of course, teaching. So this is teaching our children of what they should do. This is a part of our biblical disciplines. Reading the Bible, going through, this is the way that we do things, and this is why.
Right.
The last thing, of course, is prayer. So this is the last part of biblical parenting, is not only praying for your children, but praying with your children, which is very important.
And that's one of the things that we were very intentional about doing. Mm-hmm. If I'm here, almost, I would say 95%, of the time, I say prayers with them at night, with all the kids. And then when I'm not here to be able to do it, or when Haley's home and the kids want her to pray with them, then she'll go up there and pray with them. It's very rare that we miss a night of praying with
They won't go to sleep without it.
Most of them won't.
They'll say, we can't sleep because nobody prayed with us.
And there are some times that we'll say, hey, you need to say your own prayers, not because we're lazy and we don't want to go upstairs and pray with them, but because we want to encourage them in their relationship with Christ. Right. By praying and beginning to understand that it's a relationship between them and Him that doesn't have to go through us. But while they're still young, we definitely pray with our children. We pray with them at night. We pray before our meals.
We pray before school.
We pray before school a lot. I don't do that as much as I do at night, but I started praying with the girls, my 2 oldest, when they were in elementary school. So we started that then. Just because there's a lot of stuff going on, and to be honest with you, I wanted to send up a prayer. If this is going to sound terrible, but there's a lot of school shootings going on. If they got put in a bad situation, I wanted to be sure I prayed with my children before they went to school. So that's a good time to pray with them.
So basically what all this is these are biblical principles about raising your children. We really encourage you to follow these. But the biggest thing is recognizing your child, their behavior, knowing their faults, right. Not holding them against them, but helping them to mold them into something, the person that God has created them to be.
That's right.
And some of the people in your life will shine a spotlight on your children. And sometimes it's very annoying. Sometimes it is the teacher. Sometimes it's their Sunday school teacher. Sometimes it's people that you don't expect are going to come to you and say, I don't really see a problem with your children. Now, sometimes they are picking on your children. Yeah. I feel like sometimes they are. And sometimes they are truly concerned and they want to bring something to your attention that you can correct. And I would try to view it, and I really do try to view it each time, as this is a way that we can be we can have constructive criticism, and we can correct behavior that needs to be corrected, because you're not always there. And it is a problem for children to have these behavioral issues outside of us watching them. So listen to your teachers. When they give you a problem to deal with it. Don't criticize the teachers, and do not use that as an opportunity to break down authority.
Right.
Because what you are teaching your children when you do that is that you're the authority that is over them, that they don't have to listen to them. And it's very important. And that's something that in this book, Shepherding a Child's Heart, it talks about the biblical authority. God is an authority. And if you do not teach your children to submit to authority, then they will never submit to God. Right. And that's a very important step in raising your children. Absolutely.
So guys, thanks again for being with us today. Go check us out on the GuthrieFamily.blog. One of the great things that you can do for us is kind of share our content if it's helpful for you. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.